Hello, and welcome to this Gospel Online talk on Jesus will return from heaven. If you visit New York and go to the UN building in Manhattan for a tour, you'll find it very interesting. For this is the place where nearly all the nations of the earth come together in an effort to maintain world peace and to promote cross-border humanitarian projects. Opposite the main building, where all the flags of the 193 nations are arrayed, there's a small park area with an inscription chiseled out on a large wall. The wall, disappointingly, is a little discoloured by the pollution of the city. Nevertheless, the words, which are a quotation from the prophet Isaiah, are clear enough. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they learn war anymore. These are truly noble words, and for the UN, they are aspirational words. But sadly, man cannot make them a worldwide reality. The UN has had its successes, but all too often its resolutions are ignored by those that really matter. But make no mistake, these words of Isaiah will come to pass one day soon. Yes, they will come to pass, but not by the wholehearted agreement of the nations with sincere and determined intent, but through the coming rulership of Jesus, the Messiah. It's regrettable that on that wall, the first part of Isaiah chapter 2, verse 4 has been deliberately missed out. Only the second part of the verse has been inscribed. Missed out are the crucial words, and he shall judge among the nations and shall rebuke many people. These words speak of Israel's Messiah, who will bring about much needed disarmament and world peace. The Lord Jesus will return from heaven to reign as King of Israel and King of the whole earth. If we look at this passage from Isaiah chapter 2, verse 1, we can see that all the nations will come up to Jerusalem for truth and righteousness, and not to Manhattan. All nations will learn from the Lord Jesus about how to live godly lives in peace and harmony. He will teach us of his ways, and when we walk in his paths, for out of Zion will go the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He should judge among the nations and should rebuke many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. After the Lord was resurrected from the dead, he was with the disciples for 40 days before he ascended into heaven. During this time, he spoke to them of his worldwide kingdom, which will have Israel at its centre and Jerusalem as its capital. And so we should not be surprised to find in Acts chapter 1 and verse 6, the disciples asking when the kingdom of Israel would be restored. The Lord did not answer this question directly, but he told them that they had a great preaching work to do. As they pondered upon this, then something very dramatic happened, as recorded in verses 9 to 11. The Lord was taken up into heaven. Then the two men, who were undoubtedly angels, said, "Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as you have seen him go into heaven." He had gone into heaven, yes, but he will certainly come back from heaven. The Lord has to come back to raise the dead and give immortality to all his faithful disciples. He has to come back to restore the kingdom of Israel. He has to come back to fulfill the words of Isaiah and of all the prophets. He has to be the Prince of Peace. The Lord is to return, they say, in like manner. And so as they saw him as the resurrected man ascend, so they will see him return. He will come back in bodily form, just as they saw him go. The Lord ascended from the Mount of Olives, which is just outside Jerusalem. And remarkably, the prophet Zechariah in Zechariah chapter 14 prophesied that his feet would stand at this very same place. He also tells of the distressing circumstances in which this will arise. The situation today in the Middle East is very tense, and we're now seeing a whole range of events that show that soon all the nations of the earth will be at war against Israel at Jerusalem. Without the Lord Jesus' return to intervene, there will be terrible disaster for the people of Israel and for the world at large. Yes, God will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle. This will be a fearful war involving all peoples. But thankfully, this brings about the return of the Lord Jesus as the King of the Jews and the Prince of Peace. A great earthquake will result in the defeat of the warring peoples. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations, and his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west. Thankfully, the war will stop, and there will be great beneficial geographical changes. Precious water will flow out from Jerusalem. Life-giving water will flow to both the Mediterranean and into the Dead Sea. And it shall be in that day that living water shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea and half of them toward the hinder sea. And as that water goes forth from Jerusalem to give life and cleansing for Israel and eventually for all the Middle East, so will the Master's teaching go forth to give life and cleansing spiritually for Israel and for all mankind. Wholesome and life-giving words will change men and women's hearts, and so much for the better. The world at long last will be blessed with a selfless and truly righteous teacher and ruler. And there will be one just authority in the earth. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth. In that day shall there be one Lord, and his name one. Jesus will return from heaven. We have looked at just 3 passages in this talk from the many that we could have chosen. I pray every day for the Lord's kingdom to come. I hope you will pray too for Jesus' soon return.